Hi, everyone. I am Linda Black Elk. I'm the Food Sovereignty Skills Coordinator at United Tribes Technical College in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm coming to you right now from the traditional homelands of the Oceti-Sakowin, the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and the Arikara. And I'm so honored to talk to you guys today about how to process squash for long-term preservation. Now, how do people of the plains do that? Well, the way that I was taught, very fortunately, by my Lakota family is to dry the squash. And you can dry all varieties of squash. And I'll talk about what you can do with them after they're dried, but you can dry zucchini. So all of those zucchini that you have left over, or the ones that you think are too big to eat, and you just throw them away or you compost them, don't do that. Dried squash, even dried zucchini, the large zucchini that maybe be a little, styrofoamy or weird, have a weird texture when it's fresh, actually has a fantastic texture when it's dry. So you can do that. You can do all of your yellow squashes, even the tough-skinned yellow crooknecks that are so popular on the Great Plains. You can do the yellow zucchini. You can do all of your winter squashes. I have a beautiful butternut squash here, and I'll show you guys how to air dry that as well. Air dried squash is so versatile and delicious. So here is a yellow squash that I air dried, just a small one. Look at that texture. Isn't that kind of funky and weird? So that was just a yellow zucchini, and it was probably about this long, and look what it dried up into, right? Now you could put this in soup. You could put it in all kinds of stews. You can put it in gratins. You can put it in pasta dishes. When my husband and I make soup with our dried squashes, people actually ask us if it's bacon. Look at this dried zucchini. Now this is actually a huge dried zucchini, and look what it dried down into. It's wonderful, and the texture is fantastic. We also, of course, as I was saying, air dry all of our winter squashes. This particular butternut earlier, look at this, right? It's kind of snappy. I air dried this, and this was a butternut. I didn't even peel it. You can kind of see the rind on there. That's okay. The skin is thin enough so that it'll still be delicious when we put it into soup this winter. Dried squash will kind of melt into the broth and make this delicious, flavorful broth for all of your soups. But yeah, so this I did a little differently. I didn't spiralize it like I did the zucchinis. I just cut this into slices, but I'll show you how to spiralize your winter squashes as well, okay? So let's get started. Let's get started with just a small zucchini first, because that's pretty simple. And I'll spiralize this one. And sometimes I mess up and it breaks, and that's totally okay. You'll see that I don't fret about it. But first I'm gonna cut each end off. It's just a lot simpler that way. And then I always like to start from the small end, and I have a good sharp knife. My husband literally just sharpened this knife for me. So what I'm gonna do is I have my squash kind of standing up. Let me see if I can, there we go. I have my squash standing up, and I'm just gonna make a cut into here. Now, how thick do you want your cuts to be? Well, really that's a matter of personal preference, but the thicker the squash is, the more likely it's going to mold. So I usually stick to about 1/2 inch, no more than 1 inch. If you cut it too thick, it'll probably still dry just fine. It probably won't even mold, but you might want to put a fan on it. Now, if you live in a dry climate like I do here in Mandan, Bismarck and Mandan, North Dakota, you're not going to have any problem with this. You won't even need to put a fan on it. Just hang it, and I'll show you how to hang it in a minute, and let it dry, let it air dry. But if you live in a more humid climate, say you live, down in South Carolina or something where the humidity is higher, or maybe it's a time of year when the humidity is higher, you might want to just put a box fan or some other kind of, get your ceiling fan running onto your squash. So can you guys see what I'm doing there? I'm just turning the squash and trying to be pretty consistent with the size of my cuts here. Trying not to be too thin because otherwise it'll break. Try not to be too thick because it just doesn't dry as easily when you do that. But if you get pretty thin, it'll work even better, but it might break. You can just dry these. If you can't do the spiraling or you don't have the patience for it, or you don't see the benefit to it, it actually dries really well this way and is very easy to transport. And then you can choose the size of the pieces that you put into your soups. But if you don't want to, just cut your zucchini into slices and dry it that way. Now, if you don't want to air dry your zucchini, can you put it in a dehydrator? Yes, of course you can. Just slice it to about 1/2 to 1/4 inch thick. Put your slices in a dehydrator and let them go until they're sort of like zucchini chips. I actually have a lot of friends who dry them into zucchini chips. And like a potato chip, they eat them that way. They season them first. So when the zucchini is in a dehydrator, they will sprinkle them with salt, maybe a little chili powder, things like that. And they'll dry them that way, and it'll be seasoned zucchini chips, and they eat them as a snack. So I haven't broken it yet. We'll see what happens, but it is getting pretty tippy. So sometimes what I do, if it gets tippy, I'll show you by moving my camera, okay? If the squash gets kind of tippy and you get down to the end and you don't want it to break, you can actually lay it down and start cutting like this. You just have to turn your squash. You have to spin it, right? Okay, we're almost done with this one. Think about how long that took me. Maybe just a couple minutes. And I'm almost done here. Okay. Right, now watch. It's kind of like magic. Okay. So you might want to go through and just pull apart your zucchini just to make sure that you have a good spiral. You'd have to get your finger in there a little bit, and that's okay. You're just looking for a coil. You want to be able to separate the slices so that the air will get in between and dry it. Now, that's perfect, okay? See that? Okay. Okay, cool. I got a little thinner down here toward the end. That's why I'm not holding it up, and that's fine. It's not going to make any difference at all, but isn't that fun? And this is a great way to dry it. Now, if you want to save seed, you can actually go through and start taking some of the seeds out, or all of the seeds. You can leave them in and have some really good textured zucchini seeds in your soup this winter. They're yummy and delicious. You can even toast these up if you want, but I think I'll probably end up taking a few of these out and save them for my crop next year. I do that. I take, I have so many zucchinis, but I take probably 5 to 10 out of each one. If I think I'm going to share some of my zucchini seeds, I'll take more than that out. I'll try to get as many as possible. But yeah, so there you go. Now, how do I hang this? That's a question I get a lot. So I have this really cool drying rack that my husband made for me, that hanging back here. And it has these dowels, okay? And you can see we dry all kinds of things on here, meat, squash, all kinds of things. So what I do is I take my dowel and I start at one end of the squash and I just feed it through all the way. To the other end. Okay. And then I will just feed this into our drying rack. Okay, see that? And in about 3 days, it will be completely dry. And this will look like this, right? Isn't that crazy? And I will tell you, this zucchini was about the size of this one. Isn't that wild? And so, yeah, that one's done. All done, ready to go, ready to dry, okay? All right, so I wanna also show you that you can do sort of more oblong, oddly shaped squash, and even ones, you know, zucchini skin is so thin, you can eat that. Sometimes the skin is pretty thick and hard, and you want to, if you leave those on there, when you put the squash in your soup, it just, it's tough to chew, especially for elders that you might want to be giving your dried squash to. So you can just take your vegetable peeler, I have one here, and peel the squash, okay? So I'm just going to show you, I have this one here, and I would just go through with my vegetable peeler. If the squash is too tough, this one might be, it happens, to peel with a vegetable peeler. I just kind of get off what I can with the vegetable peeler, you know, get some of those larger pieces off. And then I'll even go through with my knife instead and peel off some of that tougher skin, okay? So sometimes it's tougher and it's harder to get off, but you can do it. And then I'll just kind of do the same thing. Oh my God, love. This one is like rock hard. Okay. So we can still dry this one. It's not a problem, but we have to get started. Okay, so I got the smaller end off, and look how thick that skin is. Can you see it around there? See, when you run into things like this, you don't freak out. I could have paused this and cut this out, okay? But I want you guys to see that you don't let stuff like this stop you. You don't let stuff like this make you say, okay, never mind. I'm just gonna make this look as easy as possible, because you're always gonna run into things that aren't easy. So you can still dry this one. Now, maybe you don't want to. I mean, this is gonna be a labor of love. So maybe you don't want to take the time, you don't have the time to dry a squash with such a thick skin. You can still do it. You just have to, like, you know, work on chipping the skin off, cutting it with a knife, cutting it with a peeler, and then eventually getting it off. The other thing that you can do once you get some of it off is you can cut it into slices. And again, you know, you have to like get your knife in there and cut it into slices like this, and then cut around. This is always way easier. Cut around the skin, and there you have a slice. And now you can just like put this on your dowels, these slices, feed them into there, and you can dry that squash in slices. The ones with the really thick skin like this are not impossible to spiralize, but it takes an extremely strong and sharp knife. And I really just don't feel like messing with that. So I'll just end up cutting this into slices, peeling it, and hanging the slices onto my drying rack, okay? So that one. All right, this one, however, I already peeled. It's the same type of squash, a yellow crookneck, but the squash was thinner and I was able to get the peeling off with my vegetable peeler, okay? So there, I'm just cleaning it up a little, you know, getting a few of those last little bits off, as you can see. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is, just like with the zucchini, I'll take both ends off. Okay, both ends off. Then I'll again start from the smaller end, start spiralizing. And sometimes when it has a small neck and a large body, the squash will break. And if that happens, that's okay. You can just dry it, hang it to dry in pieces. Okay, Crookneck squash is my absolute favorite. I love the texture. I love the flavor. It has a firmer texture when it's cooked than zucchini does. Zucchini will kind of have a really soft, my son almost says slimy texture that zucchini has. Crookneck squash does not have that. I remember a very, very long time ago, Gladys Hawk in Wakwala, she made one of my, what has become like my favorite dish ever. Kind of like that dish that I always say, like, you know, if I got to choose my last meal, what would it be? It would be fried yellow squash with sausage. And what is called tomato wojapi. Do any of you guys remember that? A long time ago, they would take canned tomatoes and they would mix them with a little bit of sugar and some saltine crackers. And they would make tomato wojapi, no lie. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but that, you know, with the sausage and the crookneck squash would be my last meal. So this one broke down toward the end, but I'll show you what to do with that. And now you have like a really awesome little yellow crookneck squash spiral that we will also put onto, I'll actually hand this off to my husband, my love, here's his hand, and have him put that on the hanger, put that on the rack. And then what do you do with this? You just keep cutting, you just keep cutting it to dry, right? You don't give up, you don't stop what you're doing. You just keep cutting, just keep cutting, just keep cutting. That kind of sounds scary in a way, right? But that's okay too, okay? And we're almost at the end here. Don't throw any of your squash away, whether they are, you know, like really tough, like the one that I had a minute ago, or, you know, they're softer like this one. If they're huge and you think they're not going to have a good texture, don't throw any of them away. Dry all the squash, dry, pickle, or ferment all the things. Okay, look at that. It's beautiful. Look, this part fell off. So what, you know, I'm going to take some of those seeds off of there. You don't have to, but I'm going to. I'm just going to hang this single slice on here. It'll dry fine, okay? You don't even have to worry about it. There's no reason to fret, no reason to feel like, oh man, I messed that up. Who's going to judge you?
The squash gods.
No one's going to judge you, right? So don't even worry about it. Okay, so here we have a gorgeous butternut. Dried butternut is one of my most favorite ingredients in the universe. Dried Hubbard, dry, you know, all your dried winter squashes are going to be really delicious. There's something about dried butternut that I just personally really love. Okay, so what you want to do with your butternut is peel it, because that skin does get tough, and we're lucky, you know, unlike that yellow squash that I was working with earlier, it's pretty easy to peel. So you just want to go through, go around and peel the whole thing. You just need to get that initial, you know, orangish. What color is that, honey? What do you call that color? Beige. Isn't that weird to have a beige squash, but whatever. Just go ahead and peel the whole thing. Okay, until you have something resembling this. Okay, and as you can see, I've already started to spiralize this one and cut it, just because the winter squashes take some time and I didn't want you guys to have to wait too long for me. So I started cutting it already for you, okay? But I'll keep demoing here. It's just like the zucchini. It's just like that yellow crookneck. You want to, you know, get your knife in there. Let's see, where did I leave off? Oh, here we go, okay? And you just want to try to take your time and be consistent. My sister, Lisa Ironcloud, she really taught me that, you know. I was always like, oh God, just get it done, you know, and kind of would, see, I'm already not taking my time, and I got that piece a little thin there. So it might break there, that's okay. But you know, I would screw up much more often. And she would just be like, it's okay, you know, just start over, start from where you left off. Take your time, take it slow, lay it down if you need to cut. And she even actually taught me too that you can like make a cutting line, you know, go through. You don't even have to cut all the way through, but just kind of make a guideline. Like, watch me. Okay, just make a guideline with your knife that you can follow later to guide your knife through instead of, you know, it just takes some time, right? So I made a guideline starting all the way back here. So let me see what happens if I take my knife and I start cutting all the way through. That's awesome. So cool. It's just so great to be able to do this. I'm so thankful to the people who've taught me this, you know. This squash actually came from an elder on Standing Rock named Lola Agard. She's one of my favorite people in the world. She's one of my mentors. She's taught me so much. She's a master gardener. She can grow anything. And I mean, tons of everything. Oh, look, it's gonna probably break there. Look. So, I mean, it's fine right now, but it's probably gonna break there. And so I'm just gonna even make it easier on myself since it's probably gonna break. I'm just gonna break that off and just show you guys this, right? So here we have, get my knife out of there, our butternut, pretty much, you know, done with this half of it. You might wanna take your thumb through and just make sure all the layers are split apart in a good way, you know, they're not too stuck together. Get any little pieces that you might have missed. And then, honey, do you think you could hang this one for us so that everyone can see it hanging on the rack? Now, see how like tough this one is, right? It's not soft at all. Tomorrow, this will be softer, okay? Tomorrow, this will be a lot softer and it'll be more pliable and you'll be able to manipulate it more on the rack. and like, you'll just be able to spread it out more, right? So don't worry if it's pretty tough tonight, put it through on the rack and then you can, you know, have it make it more pliable tomorrow, right? It's cool. All right. All right, so I'm just gonna keep marking and cutting this larger piece. My husband went through and peeled this entire thing for me. So I'll just do what I did with the zucchini and all the other squash. I'll take that end off. I won't waste that. I'll probably take this end, cut this out and just hang it on the drying rack anyway. There's no reason to waste that, okay? No reason at all. You could even do the same thing with that, right? Why would you waste any of it? It's so good. And then I'll spiralize this one tonight. But you guys have seen, you know, I spiralized the zucchini, the yellow squash. I had a squash here that is like rock hard, really thick rind, tough to get through. So I'm just gonna start making cuts and turn that into circles and then just put those individual slices on my drying rack. Actually, I'll show you how to do that. I'll do that with this large butternut because for some of you that might be easier, you know, and so you can actually dry sliced butternut. There's lots of old pictures of indigenous people drying sliced winter squashes. Works beautifully. You can do this even with a huge Hubbard squash, you know, any size squash that you want, right? So, oh, and my sister, Lisa Ironcloud, that I was talking about earlier, gave me a great tip a long time ago. She said, if something, if you peel it and it's still really crunchy and not pliable and it keeps breaking, but you really want it to be like one long spiral, let it sit overnight. Okay, peel it just like this and let this sit overnight. And tomorrow, this whole thing will be more pliable and a little bit easier to cut without any breakage, okay? But if that's not working for you, if you're in a hurry and you just want to dry it in slices, you absolutely can do that, okay? So just continue cutting this into slices. What I do with, since the butternuts are solid, I actually just make an X in the middle with my knife, okay? And that's what I feed through the dowel right there, okay? All right, there you go. If you guys have any questions, let me know. We have dried zucchini tonight, right? We have dried yellow crookneck squash tonight. Even though it fell and broke into pieces, it's not a big deal. It'll all dry the same way. We dried a butternut squash tonight. Again, this one broke apart into a few pieces. Who cares? You are the only one who judges you. No one else does. You're the only one who has a right to judge yourself, right? You'll get better and better as time goes on. If I wasn't doing this on camera, I probably would have like taken my time and got this all into one beautiful long spiral. But you know, I always get nervous because I know people are gonna watch this and I'm like, oh gosh. So I rush and it broke, but it doesn't matter because it's all gonna taste the same, okay? And then, oh, I had the squash, I'm reiterating here because repetition is one of the keys to learning skills like this, right? I had one with a thick rind, tough to cut. So I'm just gonna do my best, maybe get a larger knife, cut that into slices. Then I'm gonna cut the rind off like this. Oh, that is a thick rind. You know, some of them just get that way. It just absolutely depends on, you know, how it was growing. And there I have a perfect slice that I can just hang on my dowels and dry like this, okay? No need to waste any squash that's out there from the largest to the smallest. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great one. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions.